Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina. This is an anthology collection featuring 16 short stories by various authors. It is edited by Kevin J. Anderson, who is no surprise to longtime Star Wars readers. He wrote the Jedi Academy trilogy, Darksaber, the Young Jedi Knights books with his wife Rebecca Mesta. He also edited other anthologies for Star Wars, like Tales of the Bounty Hunters and Tales from Jabba's Palace, which I want to get to eventually. So he is by no means a stranger to the Star Wars fandom. And so this was a big deal when it came out. This was a collection of 16 stories set featuring characters that you saw in the Mos Eisley Cantina. And it sold very well, which is why it justified the other two books. This one featuring characters from episode 5 from the Bounty Hunters, and episode 6 featuring the characters from they're seen in Jabba's Palace. So they all follow that theme of following background characters from one set or one scene in a movie. And this one is I read specifically to be part of not only reading the Star Wars Expanded Universe, which I'm working on getting the last several books. I have about less than 30 left out of 150. You say they have 30 left. That's so many. That's not as many as, I've read 120 at this point. So anyway, I also read this because it is part of my short story reviews that I'm doing on the channel as YouTube Shorts. If you don't know, I do YouTube Shorts where I review short story collections, short story by short story. I started out this year doing the entire Empire Strikes Back from a certain point of view, which was 40 short stories. Oh my goodness, that one was long. And then I also did Worlds Long Lost, which was about 16 short stories, and I did Declassified, which was 4 novellas. And so of those, the ones I've reviewed, Worlds Long Lost is a top tier book of the year for me. It was a great novella or short story collection, and Vanguard was pretty good, and Empire Strikes Back from a certain point of view was incredibly mixed. And I'm going to say the exact same thing about Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina. It's incredibly mixed. There are some really top tier short stories here, and there are some really bottom tier short stories, and there's some mid ones, so it's kind of all over the place. This is the biggest failing of the collection, and I believe this was an intentional part from Kevin and from Bantam, who originally published this. It says Del Rey, but it was originally Bantam. I think this was intentional at the beginning, which was that they would make every story tie in to the Cantina specifically, that they would try to tell the story of, Obi-Wan and Luke coming in with the droids, and the cutting off the arm of Ponda Baba and killing Evazan, and seeing the events of Han negotiating with Obi-Wan and Luke. Like, almost every story in the collection, I think there may have been one or two that didn't have that, but almost every story in the collection tells that from one of the other characters' perspectives, and it just got kind of boring. Some of the, like one or two of the times, maybe 3 of the times, it was really interesting to see it from this other perspective. But most of the time, I was like, we've already seen this before. Stop telling us the exact same thing over and over. Use your space wisely. And so a lot of these stories just felt repetitive and boring and frustrating. And then some of the stories felt like they just didn't add anything at all to the character. It just felt like it was a placeholder because they wanted to have enough short stories to fill up the collection. So it was just kind of odd. And then you had some really great ones. Let me talk about some of the few great ones. There is one about a moisture farmer who falls in love with this woman, but she gets captured by some Tuskens, and he tries to convince people to go out. That was a great short story. I loved that one. We also had a short story by Dave Wolverton. I want to make sure I get the name of it right. It was The Sand Tender, which is about the Ithorian, who's an Ithorian priest. I thought that was an incredible short story. That one was really cool. It really, maybe this lore isn't canon, but it added to the lore of the Ithorians. It made me think about what life was like on Tatooine, about their world views, and also how the events in the Cantina affects. Like, that one was really good. And then there were a few other stories that I thought were pretty good. The Jawa one was pretty entertaining, and I thought that The AC Crispin one was also pretty good. So there were some really, really good stories. And then there were some really bad stories. The Renat's Tale, oh, that was so bad. And then the one by Jennifer Robertson, what was the name of that one? I rated that the lowest of the entire collection. Soup's On by Jennifer Robertson. Oh, I hated that story. So the story's all over the place. So really you have to think, is this book worth it as a read? And here's what I'll say. If you're an avid short story reader, because I know there are people who like legitimately that's their reading. They don't like novels or novellas, they like short stories. That's your thing and you want to read Star Wars? Yeah, go for this. If you're someone who really likes background characters, read this. However, what I think would be better is to go through and like find out reviews of individual short stories. On my Goodreads, I actually wrote out all my reviews, and in my YouTube Shorts, I went through them piece by piece, and find out which ones are the most interesting, and maybe read those because it's just so frustrating to make a book like this worth it. And I'm gonna tie it into kind of the From a Certain Point of View books, which had some stories that I loved. But the problem is that when you have a short story collection, what makes it work is when you just read a short story. It's amazing. You go to the next one, it's amazing. And that's when the short story collection really stands out. But with these, you had so many good ones, so many bad ones, so many mediocre ones, and exact same with this problem, that it just makes it hard to recommend the book. It's okay if you have a dud or a mediocre story in there. Not every story is going to work for everyone, but you have to have a solid hit rate, and I don't feel like the hit rate in this book is anywhere near it needs to be. Out of the 16 stories, I think like 3 or 4 of them hit super well, and then there were like 3 that I thought were bad, and then the rest were pretty much mediocre. Maybe they started to head into the good range, like the readable, a little bit enjoyable, learned a little bit range, but like it was very rare that we hit that's a great story. And so that's just the frustration I have. So I'm going to give the book a 6 out of 10. It's not a terrible book, but it's not a great one. I will eventually get to the other 2 collections in my journey. What I generally do with my short story review journey is I will read a Star Wars one, and then I'll go do a science fiction one, maybe a fantasy, and then I'll go do a Star Trek, and maybe another science fiction fantasy, and then I'll come back to Star Wars. So I don't do them, I don't do Star Wars ones back to back. So it might be a couple of months before I get back to these, but the Tales of the Bounty Hunters only has 5 novellas in it, so that one I'll get through really fast. And Tales from Jabba's Palace, once I do that, I'll have finished the I guess you call it a trilogy. But yeah, I'll finish these particular ones. I still have a few other EU collections to read. I think the Tales of the New Republic and Tales of the Empire I don't own yet, but I will eventually. But that is my review of Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina. It's an okay book. I don't really give it a strong recommendation, but if you like short stories and you like background characters, you might enjoy this. If you've read this, what was your favorite story? What did you like about the book or dislike about it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.